We are continuing in the book called Sefer Halikutim Dach Tzemach Tzedek, the encyclopedia of Chassidus from the Tzemach Tzedek. It's in alphabetical order, and we are doing Umot haOlam. We're actually coming towards close to the end of this entry, which was very long. And we are currently up to the top of page Tov Kuf Lamed Aleph, which would be in numbers 531. So it's Tov Kuf Lamed Aleph. And we're going to learn, I don't think we did this piece, or did we? Are we up to the bottom of the page?
Yes, we're at the bottom.
Okay, sorry. So we learned about Sancheriv being the worst of the worst, because he is different than all the other idolators. All the other worshippers of Avodah Zarah, they refer to Hashem, as the Talmud says, Eloka de Elokaya. He is Hashem of all the gods, which of course there are no other gods, and they're very mistaken, and it's forbidden, and it's Avodah Zarah, etc. But at least they agree and admit that he is the source of all, and he is the ultimate creator, etc., etc. Whereas Sancheriv is in complete denial, and that's why he's even worse. Okay. So, going along, sort of on that theme, bottom of the page, and this is actually taken from Derech Mitzvah, which we've had it a few times, but most of the things that we've been doing were from the Or HaTorah, which is many, many volumes of the Tzemach Tzedek's Chassidus, whereas Derech Mitzvah is one book. So today's piece at the bottom of Tov Kuf Lamed Aleph is from Derech Mitzvah. Hine Yesh Oivdei Koichavim Umazolis. There are those that worship the stars and the constellations, Shemakchishim b'Hashem, that they deny Hashem completely. Moshiach, as it says, Ki cheshu b'Hashem. They've denied Hashem. Vayomeru, and they say, Loihu, that he is not. That's a quote from Yirmiyahu, Hey Yud Beis, Jeremiah, chapter 5, verse 12. Roitze Loimar explains the Tzemach Tzedek, what he means to say. Shemakchishim gamkein b'mitzvah, that they're also denying mitzvah hanal, the above mentioned mitzvah, which would be the mitzvah of believing in Hashem. So, in the 613 commandments, so actually in this piece in the Tzemach Tzedek and Derech Mitzvah, so when he discusses various mitzvahs of the 613 according to Chassidus. So he has this piece from a very long mitzvah, one of the longest ones there, called Hamanas Alikus, the belief in Hashem. So there are idol worshippers that deny that there's even such a commandment to believe in Hashem, Asher he mechuyavim gam kein ba, which they are also obligated to believe in Hashem. So they deny that. They say, no, we're not. But really, everybody must and is commanded and is obligated to believe in Hashem. And like we learned in the previous piece, and this was the idea, this is what Sancheriv, the king of Ashur, is all about. That he sent to blaspheme the living Hashem. And therefore, it says about him, that on that day will be sheared, will be cut, Adnai, that Hashem, the name Aleph Tal Nun Yud, is going to shear Sancheriv. Etc. B'melech Ashur, with regard to the king of Ashur, it says that, as haroish, the head, v'seyar haraglayim, and the hair of the legs. V'gam es hazakon tisfe, and also the beard will be removed. That's Yeshaya Zayin Chaf, Isaiah chapter 7, verse 20. And I'm pretty sure that when the verse says Se'ar haraglayim, that the commentaries explain there that it's referring to the pubic area, the private part, so to say. And it's just that when the verse speaks about it, it uses what we call a proper, clean way to say it. So it's called the hair of the legs. So Sancheriv, the king of Ashur, is going to be shaven, his head and his beard, etc. V'hoinyan. So Tzemach Tzedek explains, what is this verse telling us? What kind of a punishment or rectification or what's going on over here? Kisibas mitzias anoshim roim v'chatoim benafshesam. Kol kach. The reason for there even existing people that are so bad and sinful with their lives, with their souls. In other words, there's different types of sinners. Some are sinners with their body, some are sinners with their finances, but then you have people that are sinners with their soul, with their life itself. What is the reason why there are such people which are sinners to such an extent? Zehu, this is, Lefisha klipa misdamis likedusha, because klipa is similar to kedusha. So sometimes it's tricky. If it would be very clear, black and white, as day and night, so then you can discern and say, this is right, this is wrong, this is holy, this is profane. But klipa resembles kedusha. V'hinei, k'moisha b'kedusha ha'elikis. So just like when you're talking about the holy godliness, Yaduat is known, sheyesh bechinas hamshacha, there's the concept of drawing down godliness, hanikris b'shem sa'arois, which is referred to allegorically by the term hairs. Mashakosov, as it says in the book of Daniel, v'atik yoimin, and of course, and this is actually in Aramaic, this is in section Daniel, which is Aramaic, not in the Hebrew. It says v'atik yoimin, literally translated, and the ancient one of days, Yosiv is sitting, Levushe, his garment, Kislag chivar, is like white snow, snow white, V'seyar reishe, and the hair of his head, Kimer nikei, is like wool. Daniel Zayin Tes, in book of Daniel, chapter 7, verse 9. So there it describes the idea of hair. And this is talking about a very, very high godly level in Kedusha. And there it says that the hair of his head is like wool. V'hainu, meaning, Kishetzarich liyois, there needs to be, top of the next page, hamshacha, when you have to draw down, mei chachmasa yisbarech, from his wisdom, blessed be he, from Hashem's chachma, when you need to draw down into the lower worlds or to this physical world from the lofty godly level of Hashem's chachma, she'ein lacheker, and Hashem's chachma is totally beyond anything. Paraphrasing from the verse in the prophet, there is no investigating. You're not going to get anywhere. You can't grasp it. The tachlis, and it has no end. So Hashem's wisdom is completely beyond any type of wisdom. Liyois hisavus giluy hachachma be'abiyah. And you want to take that godly wisdom, which is beyond comprehension, beyond grasp, and it should exist, it should become revealed in the four worlds of Atzilus, Bria, Yetzira, Asiya. That's the acronym of Be'abiyah. In the world of Atzilus, emanation, and the world of creation and formation and action. So how do you draw down godly wisdom, or the wisdom of Hashem himself, into these worlds? She'az, that then, tzarich liyois, there needs to be, hamshacha mitzum tzemes me'oid, an extremely contracted drawing down, mechachmasa yisbarich, from his, blessed be he, his wisdom, Mibchinas, from the part of chitzoinius, external, the external part of the godly wisdom, umoisrei moichin, and what's referred to as the overspill, or the added part, or the extras of intellect. In other words, this is where we're going to get into the idea of the hair. So you have, allegorically speaking, just like there's the brain, the physical brain, which that you have the brain is is that muscle which is contained inside the skull, and in the physical brain is where there is human intelligence, and we comprehend and we understand using our brain. Now, what happens when it's beyond brain power, beyond being able to be contained in that limited organ called the brain? It's higher than that, it's more than that. So then it kind of pushes its way out, and it goes above the brain, through the skull, onto the scalp, and then sprouts out these very, very thin, hollow pipes, or whatever you want to call them, which is hair. So hair represents beyond intelligence. It represents the extras, the overspill, what the brain can't contain. So it's like these little hollow pipes. And it's so removed from the person, it's so that even when it's attached to the person's head, he feels no pain when it's cut, because it's so detached, even though it's alive, but it's so detached from its, or not detached, it's so unrelated in a revealed way to its source, which is the brain. Ki ilu hayameir atzmus chachmasoi. Now, the reason why there has to be such an intense contraction, because if the essence of Hashem's wisdom would shine, lehaya be'efshari klal, it would not be possible at all lahavois, to bring into existence mahusa chachma de'abiyah, the real essence of wisdom in the worlds of Atzilus, Bria, Yetzir, and Asiya. Would be impossible, because it's so beyond. So from infinity, how could you get to finite? So there has to be some kind of an intense contraction. So in order for all the worlds and all the levels to contain some godly chachma, which ultimately comes from Hashem's chachma, there has to be this intense contraction, similar to the hair compared to the brain. And this drawing down is called b'shem, by the name of sairos, hairs. Shehem, that they are hamshacha, they are drawing down. Shebepirud, which are separated, they seem to be detached. Mimahus hamakar, from the essence of the source, which would be the brain. Shemisham nimsheches, that from there is where they're drawn. Shehi amoyach, which is the actual brain. Lefi, because shemrak mimoisri hamoichin, because the hair is merely only from the extra, or the overflow, or the spillage of the intellect. So you don't see its connection to the brain. Vilachain, and therefore for that reason, bihichate chasayra, when the hair gets cut, lo yichav lo yichuli, it does not hurt the person at all. You could cut the person's hair and feels absolutely no pain. Vilachain, and therefore, yachoy liyos, there can be mizeh, from this, his havus, the creation of the forming of mahus chachma acheres. There can become now an essence of a different chachma, she'ena, which is not mimahus mekoira, from the essence of its source. In other words, even though you'd assume that if it's coming from its source, so it should be somewhat, similar to, or you should be able to, trace it back, and it's not. You cannot see any association with its source whatsoever. The chachma that we're talking about here that is coming down has zero seeming revealed connection to the real chachma of the divine wisdom. So it's not in a way of the down chain or the godly evolutionary system of cause and effect. Because if it's cause and effect, so just keep taking it back one notch at a time, and you'll eventually get to the original source. Not in this case. You cannot get back from any chachma in any world, trace it back to the divine wisdom. V'hu, and this is inyan, the idea, the concept, Sairos dikna da'atika. This is actually the hair of the beard of the level of Atik Yomin, of the Ancient One of Days, which is a very high godly level, which said that's the inner dimension of Keser. In other words, it's analogy. So therefore, there's like a little piece which might get, so to say, slippery over here. And that is when we're speaking about the spillage or the overflow from the brain, so you'd assume that that's the hair that's on top of the skull, the hair that's right above the brain. And suddenly now he's talking about the hair of the beard. So that's a little bit of a shift. Doesn't really explain why is the hair of the beard considered. But again, I think it's just because it's just allegorically speaking. So the whole idea of hair, any hair, it represents the idea of the extras or the extension, which you don't see any connection to the brain. But it's not the hair on top of the head, but rather it's the hair of the beard. The hair on top of the head is described over there as being black, and the beard, as we saw in the verse in Daniel, is referred to as white like snow, as we're going to say now. Kidei, in order to create this very lofty level relative to us, which is chachma of the world of Atzilus. Now that's super high. However, compared to Hashem himself, his chachma, then there's absolutely no connection whatsoever over there, because it's not in a way of cause and effect. So in order to get to chachma of Atzilus, to get down to that level, there is this tremendous contraction. V'hainu, meaning to say, inyan ha-Torah, this is the idea of the Torah, hislapshus chachmasa yisbarech. This is the enclothing of Hashem's wisdom, the divine wisdom, that we're saying that everything is detached from there, and you can't see that is really the cause. B'inyanim gashmiyim. So what's Torah? It's that divine wisdom. And what does it talk about? What is it enclosed in? Physical things. K'moi, like peya, which would mean the side of the field, the corners that a person, the side rather, that a person has to leave for the poor. Trumois, umaisris, various different types of tithings that the person has to either give to the kohen or the levi or the poor or whatever. Al yedei sayres elu. So in other words, that is like so physical. You're talking about telling me that take 2%, 10%, whatever it is, of your field and give it to the poor. How in the world does that connect to divine wisdom? You're talking over here about a field with physical grain or food, and what's the connection? So he says, well, that's really because in its true source, which we don't see the connection because it's not in a way of cause and effect, it's really like hair. And that's what Torah is. It's this divine wisdom coming down into physics. Al Yedei Cyrus Elu, through these hairs. Veheim Cyrus Levanim, and they are white hair. Kihu Makar Harachamim, because that's the source of mercy. Black represents Gevura, or harshness. And white represents purity, or, as he's saying, compassion or mercy. Val derech zeh, and along the same lines, Sairos de Zah, the hairs of Zah, which stands for Zeir Anpin, which those are the 6 midos, the character traits or whatever, the emotions, the 6 levels of the emotions in the world of Atzilus. So those hairs, shchayros, they're the black ones. Kedichsiv, as we have a verse in Shir Hashirim, shchayros ka'oirev, that they are black like, well, I guess some would translate it as a, not a raven, a
crow or raven?
Well, maybe a raven. What was the first bird that Noach sent out of the ark?
That's usually translated as raven.
Okay, so it might be, it's the same word, so it might be raven. So, and ravens are black often. So black like a raven. That's in Shir Hashirim, Song of Songs, chapter 7, verse 6. Chapter 5, verse 11. Meaning, Tzimtzumim gedolim b'yoyser, extreme, very great, intense contractions. Lahavois, in order to bring into existence, to create, bali gvul, limited things, created entities which are limited, bibiyah, in the worlds of Bria, Yetzira, and Asiya. Now, as we're going down from the world of Atzilus, Atzilus, we said those hairs are white. Now we're going down in the worlds of Bria and down. So they're the black hair, which is coming from Hashem's attributes, Shehem Elikus, which they are godliness. V'chein, and likewise, Sairos denukva adumim. Then you have the hair of the female aspect, which again up there would be referred to as Malchus, the 7th and final of the midos. So there, those hairs are referred to as red. As we have another verse in Shir Hashirim, V'dalas reishcha ka'argamon, that your head is like purple wool, which is, reddish, whatever. Shir Hashirim, Zayin Vav. That would be Song of Songs, chapter 7, verse 6. So we have different color hair, and these are allegorically speaking about different levels, but what they all have in common is that none of them are actually the divine wisdom of Hashem himself. They're all coming from there in a way that you don't see the connection, and it's not in a way of cause and effect. V'heim tzimtzumim gedolim yoiser, and there are even greater contractions, lahavois, to create dvarim gashmiim, actual physical things. V'loimar, and to say, yehi or, let there be light. Yehi rakia, let there be the heavens or the sky. Sheimilided yoita, those things are commoners. It's a physical world, so that's a commoner. It's he's using an expression where it says, the whole statement is that it isn't the way of the king to be involved in commoner stuff. In other words, the king is on a higher level. He doesn't involve himself with what regular people do. So what is that? That's the way we talk about the involvement of the creator with creation, where does it really fit? Does it really make sense? How is he involved in the physical world? Which of course he is, but that's the expression there. So we're saying that through all of these tzimtzumim, all of these contractions, it's level by level. So the different hairs are different mashal for the various different down chain, until you finally come to the physical ones, which is the greatest contractions, most intense contractions, where Hashem is creating physical things. So all of that was the way it works from the Chachma of Hashem himself to go down to Chachma of this world and to that world and so forth. V'hinei, and now, Haklipa, the shell, the concealment, the other side, the opposite of holiness. Misdamis gamkein is also copying or similar to lashpia mimena, to influence that it should come from it. Gamkein also bivchina cyrus, same idea. There's also the concept of hair in the klipa, in the negative. And then ha'hashpa nimsheches bedilug ha'erech. And then the problem is, if I can add that, he doesn't say, he's just saying the fact. And then the flow of energy which comes from the klipa is in a way of skipping, bedilug, meaning not going in a regular order, and therefore it's incomparable. And it's in a way of being distant, mehamakar, from the source, kanal, as said above. So there's also the concept of, in the klipa, of jumping in a way that, just like we said, hair compared to the real intelligence of the brain, so too in klipa it works the same way. Umistayif mizeh, so it branches out from this, hishavus haOlam. So that brings you to the forming of, the creation of the nations of the world. Hakoifrim b'Hashem legamrei, those that deny Hashem completely, not the idolaters that call him Elokad Elokaya, but the nations of the world that totally deny Hashem. V'ilu, because if haya hashpa, because if this influence or this flow of energy would be nimsheches mehem, coming from the klipa, behadraga, in a level after level, in a normal evolutionary system, bishtalshulus ilav alul, in the downchain of cause and effect, then they all would acknowledge and admit the existence of Hashem, for they call him, and they all would call him, at least, Elokad Elokaya, Hashem of all gods. Lefi, because they know, the majority of the nations of the world, they know and recognize that he creates them. Aval mitzad shesheleches gamkein pa'areiseha bivchinas dilug. However, since the klipa also sends down its influence, its energy, in a way of skipping, of jumping, verichuk ha'erech, and in a way which is not cause and effect, and it's not one level leading to the next, but it's like we said in Kedusha, so here in Klipa, it also does the same system. It knows how to, so to say, play the same game. Yatsa mizeh, so what was the result? What came out of this? Hisavus hakoifrim legamrei, the existence of the nations of the world, even though they're minority, of the non-believers, those that totally and completely deny Hashem, and they don't even call him Elokad Elokaya. So that's how they came to be, because of this down chain in a way of skipping, like the idea of the hair in the negative. And those are the ones that have no share in the world to come, complete and total deniers of Hashem in any level. And therefore, le'asid lavoi, in the future to come, Yigaleach Hashem b'melech Ashur es hasayros. So now, getting back to that verse in Yirmiyah, in the book of Jeremiah, what does it say that's going to happen in the times of Moshiach? Hashem is going to shear, he's going to shave the king of Ashur, es hasayros, his hair, shelo yitzmechu oid sayros, so that no more hair should sprout out and grow. Mehaklipois, from the klipos, shemishave mizeh hanifrad hagamur, that from the hair of the klipa, comes into existence that which is totally and completely separated from Hashem. HaKoifer legamrei, the one who totally denies the existence of Hashem, Kimelech Ashur Hanal, like Sancheriv, the king of Ashur that we spoke about, that he's worse than all of them, and in a way he's even worse than Amalek, because all the rest, even though they're worshiping and serving stars, constellations, whatever it may be, but at the end of the day they agree that the big boss of all, the creator of all, the source of everything is Hashem. It's just that they have a completely warped and messed up and very forbidden philosophy, whereas Sancheriv Melech Ashur is worse than that because he totally and completely denies the existence of Hashem. So that's what Hashem is going to take care of and make sure that such a thing can no longer grow out. V'dayam la'klipos b'metzius u'meso'olam, and suffice it for the klipos that there is a entity, an existence of the nations of the world, hamoidim b'Hashem, that do acknowledge Hashem and they believe in Hashem's existence. Shelo nimshechu min hasayros hanal. So where do they come from? Because they're not coming through this idea of the hair. There is just a down chain until you reach the belief in Hashem that the nations of the world have, but not through this unbelievable, intense contraction of the hairs. Ve'elu, and these nations of the world, these non-Jews, yiskaimu, they'll continue to exist, even in the future to come. Because they were not commanded at all to believe in the way of Hashem Echad. In unity of Hashem, they're not commanded. That's a special reserved mitzvah that the Jews have to believe in, and the Bnei Yisrael must not only believe in Hashem, but they have to believe in Hashem Echad. And actually, we learn there's different commandments. To believe in Hashem, which everybody has to believe, even the nations of the world, that we derive from the first commandment of the 10. Anoichi Hashem Elokecha, I am Hashem, your God. However, a separate mitzvah that one has to believe in the Achdus Hashem, in the oneness of Hashem, how there's absolutely nothing other than Him, that is a different verse completely. Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. And there it says Yisrael, which implies that this is exclusively a commandment for the Jewish people, and no one else is held to that degree, and they don't have to believe in that. And every time we learn this or discuss this, always comes to mind the story that is brought down in the Sicha, in Likutei Sichos, volume 26, Yisroi, the footnote there, where the Rebbe Melech Moshiach brings down the story with the Chida, how he met a Noachide, a non-Jew, and he interrogated him and investigated, and he came to the clear conclusion that the person definitely believes in Hashem and categorically, completely rejects any type of Avodah Zarah. So he told him what to do, and amongst the things that he instructed him to do, he tells him, I want you to say every morning and evening, Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. So it's pretty incredible, because he's talking to a non-Jew and he tells him to say that. At any rate, the Tzemach Tzedek is saying that those that don't believe in Hashem at all, that would be the klipa of Ashur, and they will be completely shaven away. And now that there won't be any more hair growing from the klipa, so what's going to remain is the rest of the nations of the world, that they say Elokad Elokaya, so they can't worship Avodah Zarah. That has to change, but they're not obligated in Achdus Hashem, and that's why they can remain.
That's very interesting. So there's a difference then between Hasidei Umot haOlam and the Umot haOlam we've learned previous, and I wonder how this relates then to the Umot haOlam being able to receive. This doesn't directly say a portion in the world to come, but does it?
It implies that they do have a portion of the world to come, because it said that those that don't are the ones that totally deny the existence of Hashem.
Okay. So I'm just trying to map the proper wordings to you know what I'm saying, like Because I thought it was the Umot haOlam are not going to receive a portion. It's only the Hasidei Umot haOlam. And I feel like we're talking about a third type of person, or is this the Umot haOlam? Like, in other words, we've learned in the previous weeks that the Umot haOlam do say Elokai de Elokaya,
Right.
but
Well, what I'm just thinking, I'm not 100% sure.
yeah.
I also always felt that. So so as a blanket statement, any person, including any person who believes in God, even if they believe in God in Elokai de Elokaya, has a chelik in Olam Haba.
So what I'm thinking maybe is that since then everything is going to get straightened out. So those that are misguided and are oivdei avodah zara, but because they believe ultimately in Hashem and they refer to him as Elokad Elokaya, they're going to get straightened out, and they will drop the avodah zara, and therefore they can have a share in Olam Haba. Whereas those that totally deny, so there's no hope for them, because the reason they got to that is through the tzimtzum of the hair. So they're going to just be shaven away and they're gone. Whereas the ones that are chasidum haOlam, and they really believe the way they're supposed to believe, so they obviously have a much higher and a greater portion.
So you're saying someone like Yuval Harari, so he's a kaifa breaker, so that's one category. But then someone like Alex Jones, so even though he believes that it's the non-Jew, that we got it wrong and it's all, but they get straightened out, and because they do actually believe in a Borei Olam, so therefore they do have a chelik in Olam Haba. And then of course there's the other level of somebody who's mamish a Chasidu Olam, and that obviously that's a certainly a greater chelik and everything, but they all, so there is a chelik Olam Haba for believers.
So I think when we say here that they have a chelik in Olam Haba, I'm not 100% sure, but I think we're referring to, will they be around in the times of Moshiach? Will they be around in La'asid Lavoy? And that's what we're saying, that it's not only the goyim that are Chasidim haOlam that are going to be around, but even though if they avodah zara, so long as they said Elokad Elokaya, they'll be straightened out and they will be around. And the ones that will not, the ones that will be eradicated, are those that completely deny.
So are we making a distinction between an aspect of Gan Eden and an aspect of La'asid Lavoy?
So he doesn't say clearly, but I think in the context here, when he's saying Olam Haba, he means this world La'asid Lavoy.
Very interesting.
But even on that basis, that means, so if they're around and they're makabel Pnei Moshiach Tzidkenu, obviously they'll get corrected. So then that's their chelek, but it's not an aspect of Gan Eden. Because Chasidus from Olam, there's an aspect of Gan Eden, right?
Well, I don't recall that it says that clearly either. It just says they have a chelik in Olam Haba.
But Olam Haba meaning what? The Rambam's Olam Haba meaning Olam Haba Mamish, or meaning
Olam Haba could be any one of at least three different, definitions. It could either be the afterlife, at any given time after the person passes on, or it could be any era in Yemei Moshiach, or ultimately the world of resurrection.
So that would actually make certain sense, because remember the Maisa with the Friedrich Rebbe when he was at the Waldorf Astoria, and he gave a very large tip to the what do you call it, to the elevator
bellboy.
And so the Hasidim at $5 in that time was a big thing. So the Friedrich Rebbe said, I'd rather he get his schar here than later, implying in Gan Eden.
Okay, could be. Anyway, James, you got to go to your shir, I suppose.
Oh, I do. Yes.
Okay.
Excellent class. A lot of interesting material. Thank you so much, Rabbi Turen. Thank you, Yossi.
Yeah, I'm so sorry, but I have missed it. Okay.
It's okay. Yep. Next week. Yeah. Next week.
Yeah. Do me a favor. Just send me